Right then, I've got a letter, a request from a budding copywriter. I will read it to you. So it says, I have one question if you've got time to answer it for me. How do you do your research on your readers to determine the predominant emotion and their current outlook? I've read lots of the copy that you've written, and I admire the way you write your copy. I know that X is a good place to start, and YouTube is also a goldmine, but I'd also appreciate it if you could share the process you take to determine what your audience feels about a theme at any given time. I want to get better at writing copy that speaks directly to my readers, like we're at the dinner table. I know that quality research plays a role in that, so I'm eager to know the steps you take when you're doing this research. It'd be really helpful, especially for folks like me who are outside the industry and don't have direct access to editorial experts, customer lists, and the other perks you'd enjoy as an insider.
If you enjoy The Fix and want to get access to even more good stuff, join the Fix Accelerator today. Get access to special masterclasses from Nick and me, watch expert interviews with industry legends, join live copy feedback sessions every week, and get connected to our very own private copy network. Visit thefixaccelerator.com for more information.
I thought that was a really good and perceptive question. I have some thoughts. Do you want to hear them?
Yes, I have some thoughts. And I think, well, I'll let you, you've obviously got thoughts, so I'll let you have your thoughts.
Let me say my thoughts and then you do your, and then we'll exchange thoughts for sort of 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah, and then we'll finish there. No, yeah, you go, and then because I think there's two things going on there.
Yes, there is. So I'm going to start with the final point you made about outsiders versus insiders, which I know it feels like, oh, you have access to things that I don't have access to. And that's true to a certain extent, so we're talking about the financial industry specifically here. However, this question is applicable to all industries. The thing I'd say is, when it comes to this question, working inside the industry, I don't really think I have access to any data or information that you couldn't, that would be of any use to you. So it's not like once you get inside one of these publishers, someone says, now come here, we'll tell you, we've got all the secrets here. We can tell you exactly what people want, and we know everything. We really,
on a purely legal perspective, everything's public information anyway.
I suppose what you do know if you work inside the industry is what is working and what isn't working. However, you can largely infer that from how regularly things are being mailed. People don't run adverts, say on social media or to external email lists, that aren't working. So if you see something over and over again for a period of time, it's reasonable to say that thematically must be working. There are other websites you can use, so you can kind of guess it. But the broader point I wanted to make is there isn't like this dichotomy between insiders and outsiders isn't as it's not as sharp as you're making out. It's not like insiders are given information that outsiders don't have. There's slight elements of it, but it's not as sharp as you might think. So don't think I'm an outsider, how can I ever compete with them? You compete based on the quality of your ideas, always. Insiders, outsiders, it doesn't really matter. That's the key. So I just wanted to cover that point first because it's just a simple one. On the research side, well, Glenn, how would you do it? I mean, I can tell you what my process would be, which isn't very smart, but there we go.
Well, this is where I want to define the question slightly and define the brief. Are we talking about how do we research ideas that people care about, or are we trying to figure out what people care about?
Well, the question is, how do you research your readers to determine the dominant emotion and their current market outlook? So how do you work out what topics are top of mind for them? What they care about there and then. That's how I would define it.
Yeah, you see, because it's that word of emotion, because I'm like, the way we're different as copywriters is that you go into what they care about on a like market level, if you like, I'm much more waffy and like philosophical, and I'm going, oh, what do people actually care about in life? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the, and not to say you don't do that and I don't do that. It's the blend, but that's the way we lean, the nature of who we are as people. But that's why I think it's interesting, because I think there's two types of research you should be doing. And I think where your reader is and what they care about emotionally, i.e. the state of the markets in the financial situation, the outlook of the market, like are we in a positive time or in a negative time? Obviously it's country specific and what have you, but that element is one thing, and I think you should give your tuppence on that. But then where people's emotions are as to how they being affected by the life, how they are affected by the news cycle, what it means for them emotionally and how they feel, that I think is slightly different. They're all they kind of run along adjacent to each other, but it is a slightly different research and slightly more vague how you do it. And so lead with the more specific, because I feel like figuring out the market space is the more specific, nailed on thing, and then I'll offer some waffy advice on how to wander in the streets and understand where your readers are.
I think you're right to an extent, although I'd say that actually the point where those two groups of things overlap, it was a Venn diagram. There's like market related stuff and personal related stuff, and where they overlap, you know, the crossover, that's a great idea, because it ticks both boxes, because it speaks to the personal emotions and to the sort of dominant trend. So I think we'll cover both sides.
Yes, and that's what I mean. They're similar, but there is a difference there, and I think they're not two skill sets, but two things to think about.
I like two dimensions of the idea. Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to start by saying something. I guess I try and guess where the reader is, because they'll never tell you.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out, because I'm a bit of an anti-absolutist, and there's a lot of copywriting advice out there where people going around claiming that they know everything. I mean, you just don't. You have no idea whether your idea is going to work in the market or not. The market will tell you, and if you go into it thinking you know, that's a stupid place to be. Like,
you have to
not to intuit things.
You have to you have to speculate, you have to guess, you have to have an instinct for it. So you'll never know you were right until it goes out, and then the market will tell you yes or no. And I think that's a really important thing, because I don't know, lots of stuff in our industry makes out, you know, in advertising at large, like the answer's somewhere and you've just got to sort of find it. Like, you know, people who say, go on the comments underneath YouTube videos and you'll find loads of stuff, interesting stuff that might all be wrong. It might be right. You have to synthesize that information and think, maybe people are worried about this, or I think you might start with like a thesis, like, I think markets have been going up for so long now that people are starting to worry that a crash is inevitable. That might be your thesis. And I think you want to have a thesis like, I think there are people that are worried about this, or I think everyone's just getting really curious about this term or wants to know more about that. So I'm going to get more specific about that in a second, but you're going to have to sort of start with a thesis that's a guess. And the only way of verifying it is by testing. So that's where knowing what other stuff is working can help, because somebody might say, well, we just tested an idea really similar to that. It completely bombed. You might say, okay, doesn't sound like people are interested in that. So that's where being an insider might help. But it's not going to be a definitive answer. You're going to have to come up with a thesis and say, I think people are worried about this, or I think they're interested in that, and take a guess. So how would you work out where they might be? Well, you have to do the basic things. So you have to read what they're reading. You have to follow the markets. You know, so if there's just been a massive sell-off in the market, then people are probably going to be a bit more worried about a sell-off. You know, like basic things like that. Like, what have they recently gone through? But I just, within that, try to think about a few sort of simple questions. So So the old cliche is, what keeps them up at night. And I know I was talking to another copywriter the other day who just says, that's just where I start everything. I just think, what are they really what's bothering them? And I like that. It's not necessarily the only way of doing it, I think. But so there are other sort of variations of that. So you might start with what's keeping them up at night, but it might be, who are they hearing a lot about? Who's part of the public imagination? Which people are being interested? Which companies are most dominant? Which companies are getting name checked a lot in the press? So like people and organizations, what are the dominant things? Who does the reader hate? Who does the reader love? Not their family. Boo, not families. Like in the environment of the market, once upon a time it might have been Steve Jobs and George Bush.
Well, I was just literally working on something for an American audience, and I had a call out from Bill Gates, but then I thought, well, no, actually the readership I'm going to don't like Bill Gates. You need to know that kind of stuff. You need to have that, this person's good, this person's bad, in my reader's eye kind of thing. And that just comes from time and kind of vibing it.
So think about this, why do people publish more politically inspired things in an election year? Well, one, because they know there's an election coming, but also because that's going to take up lots of the news flow, lots of the oxygen in the room is being sucked up by those people. Those people become a part of our imaginative landscape. That's the way I would, so you have to speculate, but who are they hearing about? An American is not thinking about the King of England. All right. They're just not, unless the King of England's doing something particularly interesting, unless he's having dinner with Donald Trump, he's probably not thinking about it. So just, some of those, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 companies that they're hearing a lot about. And you have to decipher that through sort of media trends. So I'm interested in like those key emotions there: hate, love, curiosity. Who do they, what are they most curious about? There are times where people are just super curious about Bitcoin. They're just really interested in that as an asset. They want to know more about it. Okay, I'm interested in that. All the times where they're really worried about certain things, or they're scared. There might be an Elon Musk story. It might be excited. It could change. But I'm just going to ask myself those questions because I want to try and work out from all of that, okay, who might I talk about, or what kinds of ideas might I talk about that would play into those things? And then I would just flip that on its head and I'd say, what aren't they hearing about at all? Because sometimes that's sort of performs the same role. If they're, if you get the sense that they're very tired with hearing about the same things over and over and over, you might say, actually, it's time for something fresh. And that completely unorthodox take, and that's just coming out of left field, might work better. But that all of this is to say, you've got to make a guess. You've got to try and infer from what's going on in the world. Okay, what's going on inside my reader's head?
Well, I'd also put a flag in before you've got to even guess. You've got to be putting stuff in your head. You've got to be engaged in the world. Now, I'd just add, there's cheat ways like that. You can't avoid just doing the work and like being engaged and looking at the news. But one really quick like sidebar tip for the fix thing. I use, I think it's Apple News just on my iPhone. I mean, most people got iPhone, but I'm sure everybody has the same thing. But the Apple News does an aggregation, and I pick a couple of things. So I've got like, strangely Man United kind of thing, but I get an aggregated Man United news. But then I've got like America. I've got all that, and all of this stuff gives me that quick aggregation. I don't need to look beyond the first line for most things, but it gives its own kind of picture of where we're going, and I just glimpse at that each day and be like, all right, okay, that's what's happening, that's moving, and it just
so that's interesting, Glenn. You do it a little bit every day, and I think that's a good point. It's not like you go there, you get the information you need, and then you switch it off. It's what's bubbling up, what's changing, what's seeing, what trend.
Looking at the stuff, and then when you then I would go back to one of our mentors from many years ago. Once you then get that trend, then you go, oh, there's something going on here. Then you start digging and you're looking for page 6 and you're looking for the story that's kind of further in, and you have to go in. But that aggregation for me is quite a good, like, bear in mind, I'm a copywriter. I write all this stuff, but I also do like literary stuff. I'm reading all stuff all the time. I put a lot of information in my head. So to kind of space it, just to do that a little bit each day, I find that quite good and quite, that's why I would give that as a little tip. Just that little every day, just kind of first thing in the morning while you're having your Weetabix, you kind of just look at the news. All right, okay. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm actually listening to Radio 4 news in the morning as well. And so all of these things are going in and you're just absorbing it and you're going, all right, okay, that's interesting. Not actively listening, like react, just absorbing at that stage. So I would definitely advise doing that.
I think that's the way to do it. And you're just trying to build up this picture of what's going on inside your reader's head. What are they hearing about? What are they interested in? Who do they hate? Who do they love? What are they curious about? And like, I know it might sound a bit daunting, but the one way to think about it would be this. Everything we do as copywriters involves trying to guess what's in our reader's head. We write a line of copy, and then the next line of copy follows on from that based on what we think our reader might, when we deal with an objection, or we might open a loop because we think I wonder what that. We're always guessing. I say this, you think that, so I say this, so they think that, so I say this, so and then I say this, and they think that. Like, that's always what we're doing. We're always throwing stuff at our reader's mind and then trying to deal with what comes back. And if something comes back, we're fortunate our copy's working, we can work with it. And if nothing comes back at all, it's because they've walked off and we've gone and made a cup of tea, and we think, oh crap, I didn't say the right thing to them. So all copywriting operates in that space between you and the reader. You can control what you say, but you can't control what they think or how they feel. So if it falls flat, so you're always speculating on what's going on inside your reader's mind. But these dominant themes, I think, are important to me because they also help us decipher what's going on in the markets a little bit. So if a share nobody's ever heard of falls by 99% in a day, who cares? It's not, if it's a share that I don't own and I've never heard of, probably won't even make the press. But if it's Apple or Nvidia or, a company I'm hearing a lot about, if it was Tesla and it went down by 50% tomorrow, it would make the front page of the BBC News website because people in the media understand what's going on. The media, to a certain extent, does this job for you. Like, one of the biggest mistakes people make about like newspapers and media in general is that they control what people think. They don't, not in any way. And people that think that don't know anything about the media. Newspapers and media outlets just reflect their audience's views back at them. Nobody picks up the newspaper they like and reads something they don't want to hear. That's not how the news works. Pick up the Guardian, you're going to hear your views reflected back at you. Pick up the Telegraph, you're going to hear your views reflected back at you. That's how the media works. So a way of using that is to sort of get in front of that process or get in the middle of it and say, well, the media are sort of telling me, look, they're reporting on this person all the time, or they're talking about this company over and over again. That must be because it's resonating with people. So I can infer from that person or that company is of note to me, particularly if that media organization is something that my target audience might read. So like the Telegraph or the Times in this country. So you can use the media. They know what people are responding to. That's why they talk about those things. It's a very cynical view, but it also has to be completely true.
Well, no, I think it also ties in. I've got a word in my head that I'm thinking of as a one word to what you're looking for is corroboration. Yeah. Corroboration is when you ask the question, how do you know what's going on? We say, we guess, we make that intuitive kind of, okay, I'm going to guess it's this. I think it's this. I'm feeling like everybody's talking about, recently I called it, turn into one of those men who predict everything. But I said weeks and weeks ago, one of our live calls on a Friday, that I'd spotted that Mark Carney was coming on in the inside lane of like, hang on a minute, like, why is this guy oh, hang on a minute, he's going to be the Canadian president. Oh God, he is. He's won. He's done. And he used to work for Goldman Sachs, and he used to be the Bank of England, and that's an interesting story. And but I'd seen that moving along. But what I was looking for, and each time I'm looking for corroboration of my intuitive idea, and I'm saying, all right, it's there. Then I see that idea corroborated over here. Then I see it corroborated in media. A really good sign, and speaks to my more waffy approach to life and research and copywriting and understanding the emotional space that people are in, is you're looking for corroboration from the world around you as well. When your friends, when your family, when people at work start saying these things, usually as cynical or dismissive, kind of like, oh God, yeah, it's this. I always remember my mum once was saying, oh, it's the credit crunch, isn't it? And I thought, there we go. That's hit the mainstream. If it's got to my mum, I can assume that everybody knows that now. And you're looking for corroboration of your ideas, of your intuitive idea in other places. And the more it's corroborated by each of those things, the more likely it's going to hit in the market. The challenge is finding the sweet spot to when it's overly corroborated and it's mainstream and therefore no one's interested in it. You've got to find that balance. That's a little bit harder, and that's for a different kind of skill set. But fundamentally, once you've intuited that idea, you're looking in as many places as possible for that idea to be corroborated and go, all right, okay, this is something I should work on. This is something I should write about. This is something that's good.
Just on if it's oversaturated, that's where I always look for how to flip it on its head, twist it around. So I don't know, back then you might have done something called the commodity crunch. Okay, that takes some of what's known and twists it in a new direction. So there are ways of working with it, but you're right. I mean, you could basically use the media to do this, and that's a great example that Glenn just came with. You know, if people start talking to you about it, or if you can very quickly say, oh, I'm writing about such and such at the moment, and they say, oh, you write about Bitcoin, are you? I've heard of it. Okay, that's a good sign. They're kind of just telling.
Also, speaking to that waffy side of my research,
I love the word waff.
Waffy is so when the Art of the Click went to editorial, I got all the questions back. Was like, yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. One of them said the word waffy doesn't exist. You've written the waffy. I was like, it stays. Like that's me and my friends have the word waffy. Anyway, one thing I was going to say, but I've lost the track of it now. Oh, when you speak to people and you're looking for that corroboration, and you driving home from that thing, and your mate says, "Oh yeah, no, I've been buying Bitcoin. I've been looking at Bitcoin. Oh, it's all nonsense, or it's all thingy, or it's that thing that's saying it." Not only does that corroborate your idea that it's in the mindset, but listen to what they say, for goddamn sake, because that is the reality. A marketer, a copywriter is not going to give you the true feedback and the honest feeling of what's going on out there. That person who has no idea that you're going to try and sell that thing to them again. They're going to speak in a much more open, realistic, and authentic way about that subject. You need to absorb that, and if you don't want to have a breakdown as you get older, like I have, and try and do it all in your brain, write it down. Get those notes, get those little phrases and words, and then you're going to reflect that stuff back later on.
So maybe we should move this into the sort of second side, and I'll preface this by saying most people aren't interested in most things, actually. So the number of things that actually break through in that way and become dominant themes in your reader's mind are always going to be quite small. So you need to sort of apply a level of cynicism, because the thing that people are most interested in is themselves and their own family and their own life. And that needs to play a role too. Because there are some things that we hear about in the press that, okay, that's, I'm hearing a lot about it, but I don't care about it because it's a long way away, or it feels very remote, or whatever it might be. For instance, you can tell me all the climate change stories in the world, but none of them will interest me as much as if there was a Just Stop Oil protest on my street. There's parts of the same story, but one's happening where I live now, and the other one is happening everywhere all the time, I suppose. You know, those are two very different types of story, and one is a lot more immediate to me. So keep that in mind too, that happening near to your reader and happening near to your reader in time and space, happening here, happening now, will always be happening over there in the future.
Sorry, all I was thinking about was when the house was near flooding and you was panicked.
I was, yeah. But people are the most important and interesting person in anyone's life is themselves. It's natural. It's not self-centered. It's just that's what we care about. So, and that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, Glenn, isn't it? Like, we can talk about China invading Taiwan, but that's going to feel very far away from me. It just is. And so you have to balance those two things off against each other.
I think it's incredibly important to balance it. It often shows itself in like what I've come to know as like the third or fifth line refrain, where in a promotion you kind of like, it's 1984 and like Stalin is rolling into town.
He has 30 years.
Stalin's corpse is rolling into town, and all of that stuff. And it's like, oh wow, we're going for a big old story lead, and it's going to be amazing, and it's wonderful. It's like, but by God, if you don't say, and you could make a F ton of money on line 3 or 5, it's all for naught, because I need to know why I am reading this thing. Yes. And it's that refrain. It only needs one line. It just think, but do not underestimate the fact, is the point you're making, that people are motivated by their own self-interest and self-needs. They just are. Whatever those needs might be different, those self-interests might be different, but they are definitely. So if you're going to a charity list, that's going to be slightly different to going to a Bitcoin enthusiast list. But in each case, you've got to make it clear why the reader wants to read. And that comes back to, I always used to laugh, and I still do to a certain extent. We started this with the old line of what keeps your reader up at night. And it's like, I mean, technically right now I've just moved into a new house and the blinds haven't come for the past few days. So I've been kept up by the light. Yeah. But what keeps people up at night? And then you go, all right, okay. So, and then you submit a headline that says like 9 ways to invest in Bitcoin. It's like, that's not keeping me up at night. What are you talking about? You mad? Like, it's finding the balance and always remind yourself that and this is why I started this whole thing by saying the separate thing. When you speak of emotions, the panic of not being able to pay the bills, worrying about your health, doing all these things, these are like visceral, real things. And if you forget about them and get too far up your own advertising arse, and this is across the board, financial publishing or like out of home stuff or billboards or Facebook ads or whatever, if you just go on that ride of like arty, crappy, attention grabbing fun and forget the reader, you're going to fail. So you need
best ideas, and like, so that the best themes will have a natural connection into the reader's life. It will just feel inherent. So when people are feeling really curious about Bitcoin, it's because they're thinking, should I be buying it? Should I not be buying it? They're already thinking, oh, here, my son's made a ton of money. It's kind of connected to their life. Or, Elon Musk in the US at the moment, he's doing things in government people don't like, but it's not just government. It's like services that they might need, like the IRS or Social Security or the Department of Education. Like, there's a connection into their life, and they might feel one way or the other about it, but that connection's already there. If we were talking about like Prince Harry, he might be doing something. He's always doing something, isn't he? Moaning usually, but he's always moaning about something. But what does that have anything to do? What does that have anything to do with me? The connection into my life is let him moan, let him be happy, it doesn't really make any difference. I don't know why I picked him. I should have picked the king, shouldn't I? Because that would have been a callback to earlier in the. And what I'm saying is, some people who are dominant in people's minds, some ideas or whatever are there, but they don't connect into my life, or making that connection is quite tortuous. So if the king was selling off a load of land And in that process, there's a company that you could buy that was going to make money for. Yeah, I can start to make that connection, but I have to work hard at that because it's not inherent. And so it's just, I guess it's those two parts. What's going on in the reader's mind, trying to guess. How does that connect to something in their life, the closer to their money in this case, since we're selling a financial product? If we're selling a health product, we would be connecting into people's fears and worries and concerns around their health. It would, it would shift. And then just trying to find connections between those two things. That's really what we've got to do. That's what we've got to do. But I'll just come back to my original point, which is great copyright. It's guesswork, and you won't get it right every time. But the best copywriters are willing to take that risk and say, no, I think this is how people are feeling like this about this. And I think if we talk about these subjects now, we'll get a good response. And they won't know they're right until the copy goes out. You never do.
Yeah. And the way to make your best informed guest is thus answered within the way I phrase that, to be informed. So you've got to keep putting that stuff in. You've got to be looking out, extrapolate from everything. What is this telling me? What is the world telling me about what people are interested in, are moved by, are worried by, are happy about, excited about? Like, it's all not negative. It's like, what is excited? Like, wow, this is great. The Bitcoin, I don't know, what was it, 2-3 years ago when it was all going up and everybody was buying whatever they could. There was an excitement. Everybody was like, oh, hello. Someone gamified it. Everybody was on it. And it's like, oh, can I get a little bit of this thing? That was an exciting thing. You're looking for what is charging people, and you've got to be in the news, in the how do I just want to separate. You need to be in the written word, in the media, but you also, you're a fool if you ignore the real world, like your friends, family, the cafe, the pub, what people are actually saying. That will elevate your copy to another level.
Yep. No, that's very true. I think that's about as comprehensive as we can get. If you've got more questions on that, so that question came from a Fix Accelerator member who sent it to me on Discord. If you've got more questions on that, I think my kids are going to come bother us in a second. Yeah, set plus. Yeah, they're not allowed out here while I'm recording, but they don't know that. Yeah, send us any more questions. Sorry, I lost my train of thought at the end. Any more questions, send them over to us and we'll address them. Aside from that, we will see everybody for another episode of The Fix next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Au revoir. That's all for this episode, but if you'd like to get your copy reviewed, or you've seen some copy you want Nick and Glenn's opinion on, get in touch at feedback@thefixcopywriting.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share.